there's alcohol involved, and I threw on the black pants, and I just assumed that they were the black pants that were for me.
Oh no!
But Jeff, they were not.
Oh no!
And
are these? Hang on. These are the pants that are so tight you can see what religion you are.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So what now? Welcome to 32 Thoughts, the podcast brought to you by the all-new GMC Sierra HD. Elliotte, so what now? Edmonton loses to San Jose 3-2. For that brief moment after Ryan Nugent-Hopkins cut the lead to 1, we thought maybe there was a glimmer of hope, only to watch it extinguished on Thursday night. The Oilers now are 2-9-1. 31st in the NHL. It's a lot to get into here, whether it's Connor, whether it's Ekblad, whether it's the goalies, whether it's Woodcroft, whether it's Holland. Where would you like to start?
Jeff, I'm looking at the trending topics on X.
I think I just named them.
McDavid and Draisaitl, Oilers, Woodcroft. That's never good. That's just never good. I was in shock watching that game. The other thing you could mention, too, if you really wanted to, is that the San Jose Sharks won their first game on Monday night. So it was Tuesday night? Was it Monday night or Tuesday night?
The Philly game? Hang on. I will check right now. Stand by.
It was Monday. The San Jose Sharks won their first game on Monday night, and now they are tied in the standings with Edmonton. It's just shocking to say. And I was one of the people that picked Edmonton to win the Stanley Cup this year.
Tuesday night. Sorry, I'll do it again.
Tuesday
night.
Okay.
Tuesday, yeah.
Okay. The San Jose Sharks won their first game on Tuesday night, and 48 hours later, they are tied in the standings with the Edmonton Oilers. It's absolutely unbelievable to think about. There's nobody who thought that Edmonton would be in this position this year. And when that second goal got that big bounce for Hertl to score and put them ahead, I looked at the screen and I just said, this is not going to be Edmonton's night. That's a bounce that was not happening for the Sharks the first month of the season. And that's just a sign that the hockey gods are not in line with Edmonton right now. And that is a team that is waiting for something to happen. Jack Campbell happened, him going on waivers on Tuesday, but now they are waiting for something else. You can tell it, you can see it, and they're going to force the hands of the organization to do something. Earlier this week, it was 2 days ago, I wrote in my notes that they recognize Woodcroft's record. He's got the best winning percentage coming into this season in Oilers history. He's only coached one full season, and they don't want to make the change. But if this keeps going, you're going to be forced into position to do something. And I think the Oilers are in that position now. Look, there's all the lip readers out there who saw Woodcroft and Dave Manson walking across the ice at the end of the game. I got in big trouble once, Jeff.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it, Elliotte.
I got in big trouble once for lip reading.
Yeah.
Once. But look, everybody watching this knows something is going to happen. Whether it's a trade, whether it's a coaching change, the Edmonton Oilers are going to have to do something. And now one thing I'll say is there are people in the league who believe the Oilers were on the precipice of a big move on Wednesday. I don't know what happened. I don't know where it is, but I had people saying to me, watch the Oilers in goal. They're up to something. And they weren't talking about Campbell. I don't know if that was part of it or what else was going to happen, but there were people who believed they were working on something in net, something significant, and it fell through or it hasn't happened. I don't know where we are. But I do think that is a team that is actively at work trying to make something happen.
You have your November 1st stat.
Yep.
For those that may not be familiar with it, you want to go over that quickly before I ask you something bluntly here?
Sure. So in 82 game seasons in the salary cap era, there are 66 teams that have been 4 points out after games on November 1st. 9 have made the playoffs. If you do not get off to a good start in this league, it is extremely hard to make the playoffs. That's about 14%. Edmonton was one of 4 teams this year that was in that spot. The others were Calgary, Pittsburgh, and San Jose. So the odds are really against them, and they're only getting worse as that game last night happens. Last year's teams were 0 for 4. Now, I think you'd look at a team like one that has McDavid and Draisaitl, and you'd say if anyone can do it, it's this. You know, the one thing here that's pretty clear is McDavid is far from 100%.
Yep.
And at some point in time, they may have to make a decision here. Like, honestly, Jeff, I can't imagine punting it and saying we've got to take Connor out. But, and you know how he's going to react.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to say, Connor, you're not going to play. And, you know, he's going to throw you out a window. But I wonder if we're getting to a point where they might have to do it. Like this whole conversation just seems unbelievable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm watching Ryan Whitney implode on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe what has happened here. It's shocking to me how this first month of the season has gone for the Oilers.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we're all stunned. To the Connor McDavid point, look, it looks very much like he rushed himself back for the Heritage Classic and is nowhere close to the Connor McDavid that we're used to. But I say the same thing about Matthias Ekholm as well. That's not the Matthias Ekholm we saw down the stretch last season after the deadline. Not the same guy we saw in the playoffs at all. But here's my question here to all of it. So you have your November 1st stat. Generally, most general managers, and this is what they say publicly, and so that's what we have to go on, talk about U.S. Thanksgiving, and that's when you make your decision.
Ken Holland, by the way, is a big Thanksgiving guy. He's told me that before.
We're 2 weeks away from U.S. Thanksgiving right now. The Edmonton Oilers have 5 points, and they're looking upwards at the Pacific, and they see the Los Angeles Kings with 19, and the Vancouver Canucks with 21, and the Vegas Golden Knights with 23. Even though they finally lost a game, the Anaheim Ducks with 14.
Yep.
I don't know that anyone is talking about Macklin Celebrini in Edmonton, or as I like to call him now, Macklin Celebration. But
that's good.
We'll see if it sticks.
You want to know something? I had people texting me. I woke up to text this morning with people saying, with the first pick in the NHL draft, the Edmonton Oilers select Macklin Celebrini. One thing about people out there, they are ruthless and they are relentless.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Okay, just as a quick aside, how many people were watching last night? And you listening right now, you put your hand up if you're a guilty party. How many people were watching last night just for the car crash?
There were definitely people watching and listening last night for that. I saw people out there doing that Heat Daddy guy was doing live streams.
Oh, yeah.
It was weird, Jeff. Like, you know, like I'm all for hockey fans having fun. I think it's really important. Last night, it's a weird kind of thing but last night was an event. There were a lot of hockey fans, and I mean good, real hockey fans who wanted San Jose to lose to Philadelphia that they could play Edmonton with no wins.
Oh, yeah. That was setting up the chaos game.
Yes.
I mean, it turned out to be a chaos game, but that would have put it over the top if that were San Jose's first win. 100%.
Now, I am anti-human suffering. I really am. I don't like to see people go through the meat grinder. But it was really wild to see how many people wanted to watch ultimate carnage last night.
Yeah.
And, you know, and however you enjoy the sport, that's a good thing. I can't knock fans for wanting to enjoy the sport the way they like to enjoy the sport. It it was very interesting in the online hockey community world as this game was unfolding. Like, I'm like a lot of people, I watch the game on one screen and I have my social going on another screen so I can see what people are talking about. And there was a community of fans that was having a great time watching that game. Like, it was kind of a weird, like, as you said, it's like people who watch auto racing for the crashes. It really was one of those nights. You know, the other thing you've got to be sitting here in Edmonton is everybody's, like, the Oilers organization is saying, you're going from saying, what are we going to have to do this year to add to win the Stanley Cup, to where are we and what are we going to do now? Like, you basically have to call a timeout to your entire plan and say, we have to, thank God we've got time to the deadline, because we might have to come up with a completely new plan and vision for where we are.
Well, that's one of the things to all of this too, is with the record at 2-9-1 to kick off the season. I don't think anyone's talking about Stanley Cup right now. I think that you're talking about, okay, what
just
do we
win
do
a
to
game.
get back in, win a game, and let's get back in. Let's start getting into a type of playoff picture here. But the thing is, at some point, to your point about making plans based on the new reality, you know, I'm of the firm belief, and I think a lot of people were, that this year, you know, Ken Holland was prepared to trade futures, like first-round picks, prospects. This could be a cup year. We need to really go for it, top of the winning cycle, all of it. I just wonder if all of that now goes out the window until this team gets, you know, anywhere close to being in a playoff conversation. There is no point in throwing away futures to get to the middle.
Nope.
You know what I mean? Like there's no point in throwing any of those things away if it just means, well, we're going to make the record a little more respectable. No, your trades have to be based on we're having a cup run.
100%, unless now you're going to start to redo your team, which is something that has to be discussed. You know, the other thing too here, this is widely believed to be Ken Holland's final year as GM. That, you know, this is the final year of his contract, and while he hasn't confirmed anything, it has been suggested, and we've all heard the rumors, that he will finish this season and walk off into the sunset. And now, instead of him trying to put the final touches on a Stanley Cup team, is it a completely new philosophical decision? And what does that mean for Holland? Do you leave him in charge and say, Ken, let's set ourselves up for the future, or take serious hard looks? Or do you say, if you're thinking of bringing in someone else, and I have to believe that one of the things that Jeff Jackson has talked about when he was interviewed to run this team was a succession plan. Do you start to say, okay, now because we might be doing future deals instead of 2023-24 deals, do we start talking about the succession plan? Like, you have to start talking about things right now that you, in a real day-to-day way, that you were thinking, we don't have to worry about this until next off season. Mm-hmm. Now you're doing that.
All right. The Oilers next in action Saturday against the Seattle Kraken as they look to try to make up some ground in the Pacific. One other Oilers note, and that's Jack Campbell. Playing in Bakersfield against Abbotsford on Thursday, surrenders 4 goals on 20 shots. Again, it's only his first game in the American Hockey League, but first game down, problems still exist.
Well, I don't think anybody was necessarily expecting him to come out and, you know, look like the second coming in his first game there. It's a big shock to the system. You know, there's one goal he gave up against Abbotsford, the third one, where I had to watch it several times to try to figure out
how did it go in goal?
Well, what was going on there. What's your theory on that goal for anyone who's seen it?
I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Was he trying to ramp it up to his glove? I don't know. Like I'm not a goalie expert. So I always sort of defer to the Woodleys and the Valiquettes of the
Yeah.
world on these ones. But is that the one off to the side where it looks like he's almost trying to ramp the puck up to his glove?
Now that you said that, I could kind of see it because I didn't even think about that, to be honest. But watching it, someone sent me a note, said you should go check out this goal on Campbell because it took me a few viewings to figure out how it went in, and I was like, what? And I went and I looked at it and I saw that. I wonder, is the answer here keep playing him, or is the answer that he needs a mental break? Like watching some of those highlights last night, and as you said, 4 goals on 20 shots. I was looking at it and saying, does he need a timeout? Like, some people are different. Some people like to work through it. Some people need a break. I don't know the answer here, but I was watching. Like, I understand. Jack Campbell and Ken Holland met when they put him on waivers, and Ken Holland told him, the goal is for you to go back down to the American Hockey League, find your game, and come back up. Now, whether or not the Oilers really think that, that's the right message to send him. That's what you have to tell him.
For sure.
Is that you are still you're on your contract for 3.5 more years. Go find your game. You can come back and you can help us. That's only one game, as you said, but it looks like we're a long way away from that. And everybody's different. So, like I said, some people try to play through it. Some people need a break. But, I'll say this. The Vancouver Canucks fans who do not like Edmonton, they were in their glory last night.
Oh.
They're winning. They're now 16. They're on one of the biggest shooting percentage and save percentage PDO heaters of all time. They're
great.
16 points ahead of the Oilers. They win again last night in Ottawa, and their American Hockey League team beats the Oilers team too. Like, they are in their glory right now, but it left me wondering what's the right route to do with Campbell at this time.
Okay, let's get to Vancouver then. And the one thing that I love about Vancouver and Vancouver hockey and Vancouver hockey Twitter is no matter how good things are, and as you mentioned, things aren't good, things are great. No, wait a minute, things are really great. They could always find some drama.
A little bit of a fight here, a little bit of a scrap between Trevor Linden and Jim Benning. Trevor Linden was Sat and Dan the other day on 650 in Vancouver, intimating that, back in the 2017 draft in Chicago, if we're up to Jim Benning, he might have taken another player and not selected Elias Pettersson.
And I really pushed hard as our management group to have Judd and his guys make the pick, and Judd and give Ronnie DeLorme a lot of credit as well. They loved this guy, and so Jim wasn't sold, and Jim had his choice. He probably would have taken a different player, but I really pushed to have these guys that were banging their fists on the table, and that's what I wanted them to do. I wanted let's have these conversations and let's put because I didn't feel we did a good job in 2016, and I think it cost us.
Benning denies that claim by Trevor Linden, and the fight is on. Elliotte, how do you see this one?
Jeff, 1974.
Oh,
Jack Nicholson, Faye Dunaway. Do you know the movie?
Chinatown.
Excellent. I had
Love
faith
Chinatown.
you would know that.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I love Faye
movie.
Dunaway. Great in Network, by the way. I thought that was her best performance, but still.
I love Faye Dunaway too. I'm a huge fan. Great movie. A little twisted. I think people in this day and age might not be able to handle some of the twists, but it's a fantastic movie. What is the line said, the famous line said at the end of this movie?
It's Chinatown.
Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
Now, for those of you who have not seen the film, it's basically them telling Jack Nicholson's main character, that's the way this place is, and there's nothing you can do to change it. Crazy stuff happens. So when this story came up on Wednesday night and I started hearing about it and reading it, you know what I said to myself, Jeff?
What's that, Elliotte?
Forget it, Elliotte. It's Vancouver. This story could only happen in Vancouver. Only there would this still be a thing. Vancouver, where grievances never die and old feuds are exhumed on a monthly basis.
But hang on, pause on that. I love hockey markets like that. I love hockey markets that continue to go back and relitigate key moments. Don't you love that, Elliotte? What do we do here on this podcast? We go back and relitigate all the time.
I'm not saying I have a problem with it. I just said that when I heard it, I just laughed and said, Vancouver. That's Vancouver. Now, I have a couple things I'd like to say about this whole situation.
Okay.
So Jeff is talking about the 2017 draft. And the reason that I believe this is a thing is not so much because of Pettersson and whether they're going to take him or Cody Glass, but I think internally in the Vancouver organization, it all goes back to the 2014 draft. The 2014 draft was Trevor Linden's first and Jim Benning's first running the Vancouver Canucks.
That was the Philadelphia draft, Aaron Ekblad.
Yes. In that draft, the Canucks had 3 picks in the top 36, where they selected Jake Virtanen, 6th overall, Jared McCann, 24th overall, and Thatcher Demko, 36th overall. And Demko turned out to be a phenomenal pick in the second round for the Canucks.
Home run.
But legend has it, young Jeffrey, legend has it that there was chaos at the Vancouver table in that draft because players they were interested in got taken ahead of where they wanted to go, and the list was not followed. Now, some people may listen to this and believe that list following changes all the time, that there are huge fights at the draft table where different scouts or executives chew on nails or get in each other's faces to argue in favor of one person over the other. And I generally think those happen beforehand. In most cases, I believe in the panic of the draft, particularly if some player you want is taken right before you, you follow the list. That is why the list is created. It's like homework before an exam. The reason you do the work is that when the draft goes in ways you do not expect, you look at the list and go with your name. That's next. In the panic of that draft, the story goes that the Vancouver Canucks did not follow their list. And as a result, they didn't have the best possible draft. Demko was a great pick, but other picks did not pan out as they hoped. So when this thing happened in 2017, Linden, I do think, made it very clear that whenever this was, the night before the draft, that the list was to be followed. They were not going to move off the list because of what happened in 2014. So I believe that, whether who was going to take Pettersson, who wasn't going to take Pettersson, whatever, I do believe that Linden made it very clear that the Canucks were going to be following their list because 3 years earlier they didn't, and that hurt them.
That was an interesting draft. And if we want to talk about things getting changed at drafts, when this whole saga started earlier this week between Trevor Linden and Jim Benning over Elias Pettersson, the first thing that I thought of was that 2017 draft and how there was a switch that was made. And that was the Buffalo Sabres at 8, where it was supposed to be, remember this one, Elliotte? It was supposed to be Martin Necas.
Yes.
That they took. And then instead, there was an audible called, and they went with Casey Middlestat.
Who has started to come on. It's taken a lot longer than anyone thought, but he is coming on.
He's more than a point a game player right now for the Buffalo Sabres, and I'm sure Sabres fans are thrilled to see it from Casey Middlestat. But that was a switch right there. And just as a side note, by the way, I know you're going to say either McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, but is there a better 3-on-3 player in the NHL than Martin Necas? Discuss amongst yourselves.
Yeah, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
But in that, well, how about Sebastian Aho alongside Martin Necas? You want that battery, or you want your Edmonton pair?
I would still take my Edmonton pair.
Okay, so there was a switch in that draft.
You
That
can
is
have
interesting.
anyone you want. I will take my Edmonton pair.
I don't know, man. Necas and Aho are as close to automatic and OT as you're going to find these days. The other day against Buffalo, interestingly enough, where Necas scored the goal and Casey Middlestat was caught
Edmonton.
tired on that shift
Oilers.
because of a great play by Jacob Slavin. Middlestat was on the ice with his tongue hanging out. So was Owen Power. So was Alex Tuck, and Necas tucks it in. That's a nice
McDavid.
play by Sebastian
Draisaitl.
Aho. Brady Shea picks up an assist on it too. But really, Jacob Slavin made the whole play, but didn't show up on the game sheet afterwards. Anyhow, I digress. So, I mean, it does happen to your previous point, and I think it's just interesting that at that Chicago draft, which I think we're going to go back and continue to, relitigate over and over, depending on what team you are. Like, that's the draft where the Toronto Maple Leafs said no to Robert Thomas, who was playing for Mark Hunter's London Knights, and took Timothy Liljegren
Oh, my God.
instead. Like, honestly, you can go back and do it. But as you thought about that great Jack Nicholson, Faye Dunaway movie, I thought about Casey Middlestat and Martin Necas, which really does speak volumes about the difference between you and me, I think. You went to Faye Dunaway, and I went to Martin Necas and Casey Middlestat.
I know I talk for a long time and talk in circles, but you just wasted a lot of people's lives. The other thing I would really like to say about that story coming out,
Yeah.
there's a lot of reasons that particular Canuck regime was not successful, but the fact that 6.5 years later, this is still being litigated is another reason that Canuck regime was not successful. Successful regimes do not do this.
2 points on this. 2 points on what you just brought up. One, judging by the reaction, you can tell how Vancouver Canucks fans still want Trevor Linden involved in some capacity, how much he is loved there. We talk about, Alfredson in Ottawa. It seems like everyone in Vancouver is dying for Linden to, be part of the mix again. And number two, this is, again, you've heard me bang this drum before. This is, again, why I feel that general managers, GMs, owe it to hockey to write books about their time managing teams. So stories like this can get out there, and there can be more information out there for hockey fans to chew on and become even deeper and better fans of their teams because of it. Those are my final 2 points on that. Do you have any more points on this one?
The only thing is, I think history has shown that Linden benefited from being let go because he's not tainted with the rest of what happened there.
True. That is true. Okay, so we kind of spent a lot of time on that one and used up a lot of oxygen. Let's all take a deep breath. And let's talk about the Jonathan Huberdeau situation. Sitting down in the third period against the Nashville Predators. The visuals are tough to see. He's a proud athlete. He's a very well-compensated proud athlete, but nonetheless, he's a very proud athlete with the head down on the bench. That's a tough one. I think that's the one visual everyone takes away from that game. There were the players that rallied around him. We heard things like, it's just one period out of his entire career. Let's all get over it. But when you consider this is the first year of a multi-year, $10.5 million a season contract, it feels as if the Calgary Flames can't do anything other than continue to double down and try to make this work. Agree or disagree?
Yes, I don't think there's any other option. There is, as you said it, Jeff, what are you going to do? Throw up your hands and say, I give up? You can't do that. Now, some of that is on Huberdeau. He's got to play better. Like someone was saying to me today that it's almost like you've got to do Clockwork Orange. I'm really going to the old movies here.
Oh, lovely. Ludwig van. Oh, okay, here we go.
I love Clockwork Orange.
Elliotte. Yeah, Anthony Burgess.
You in one level, it's almost like deprogramming him and teaching him a new way of playing. Like we interviewed Chris Tanev tonight for a interview that's going to air a bit later, and one of the things he talked about was it's a year in, and Huberdeau is still recognizing how much different it is to play in the West. Like some of the stuff he does in the Eastern Conference, he can't do.
Hang on. Can you pause on that for 1 second? I apologize. I just want to. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Do you remember about?
Well, thank Tanev. Don't thank me because I'm not smart enough to think of that.
Okay, but thanks for bringing it up though, because there was a thing. Geez, I want to say, Elliotte, it's like 15 years ago. I think you and I probably discussed it on air somewhere. There was this weird phenomenon where every time a defenseman would get traded from the Eastern Conference to the Western Conference, they would struggle. Like, not just struggle for a couple of games, but like struggle for a while. You know, the forecheck was quicker, the bodies were heavier, you didn't have that extra half second to make a decision, to make your move. Like, it was really a weird thing. Like, every blue liner who went east to west really had a hard time. Now, that's sort of leveled out as the years have gone on, but hearing you reference Tanev talking about that, that's all I can think about right now. Like, is it that profoundly different for players? I mean, it was once upon a time for defensemen. Is it that way for forwards?
Tanev didn't say this, but someone else said it to me. You know, you've talked about the spinoramas he likes and things like that, and he likes an east-west game. How does Edmonton play?
Oh, north-south.
Fast. How does Vegas play?
Oh yeah, no, it's no one was as table hockey as the Kings when they won the Stanley Cup. Big, strong, heavy table hockey, possession monster. Didn't have to be fast, but they were straight line, get your face up against the glass.
How does Seattle play?
I know where you're going. Which is, by the way, if I can swing it back to Vancouver, which is what made the Sedins freaks. Because in a North-South Western Conference, they went East-West better than anybody.
Yeah. And Vancouver is trying to pump up their tempo. Like, they have some really talented guys who can go east-west if they want to, like Hughes and Pettersson. But Tocchet's trying to push them up the ice too.
Sure.
So you're in a division, a really tough division with some great teams. And, you know, you're trying to go east-west. It's really hard, if not impossible to do. So I think that's one thing. But again, at the end of the day, I think the Calgary Flames are going to go out and they are going to say that we have to identify players who we think can play with Huberdeau. And that's Calgary's challenge right now. Now, you're hoping that your $84 million guy is going to be able to create stuff on his own. Look, it's just not working out that way. So you can mope about it or you can try to do something about it. And I think what Calgary's trying to do is say, who can we identify that can play with Huberdeau and help him? And can we go get that player or those players? I think that's very much part of this. But, you know, a lot of the thing with Huberdeau is, you know, like a lot of it's on him. He's going to have to try to find ways maybe to break out of his own constriction, his own thought process, his own way of playing to find ways where he can do things a little bit different.
Okay, I referenced the Calgary Flames traveling to Toronto on Friday. Toronto has their own issues, and it seems as if now there's another defenseman who's joined a long list of defensemen that when the crowd gets on you, good luck. And that includes Larry Murphy and Corey Cross and Jake Gardner and Brian McCabe and Justin Hall and Aki Berg and that player is John Klingberg. How do you read this situation?
I had a long conversation today with, you know, someone who's been in the Western Conference for a long time. And he said I was right about something. And he said that, you know, there's another factor that he thinks that he's seeing now. The thing he said that I was right about is that for the first time ever, Klingberg is going through the meat grinder. He's not in Dallas. He's not in Anaheim. And he's not in Minnesota. And I know Minnesota and the fans there love their hockey, but it's not the same heat spotlight. He said he sees a guy who for the first time ever is getting everything picked apart. And if you're not ready for it or you can't handle it, it can absolutely crush you. So he thinks that is happening. Number two, he said that Klingberg has battled some injuries, and he thinks those injuries have really caught up with him. That he's not the confident skater that he used to be, that whether it's hips or legs or whatever it
That's
is,
true.
and he thought it was hips. That Klingberg is not like, he was never a great defensive player. I think everybody always understood that, but he was always in a position where he could skate himself out of trouble or use his skating skills to cover up for trouble. And what he sees right now is a guy whose number one defense mechanism, which was his excellent skating ability, is not where it once was. And when you add that to the fact he knows he's struggling, he's battling his confidence, everything's bad. Everything's bad. Now, it looks like he's not going to play on Friday. It looks like also possible that Ryan Reeves is not going to play on Friday. But this person said the biggest challenge he sees for Klingberg is if this is just more than a 1 month blip with his skating and his legs and his hips, it's a really hard thing to get out of. A really hard thing to get out of. So he says that's what he's going to be watching the next little while is, does Klingberg regain his confidence in that skill?
Here's my question, and Maple Leafs fans, that marketplace. I had a conversation with someone years ago who brought up a really good point, and this revolved around Brian McCabe. And Brian McCabe was an interesting phenomenon in Toronto because it almost seemed as if there was a love-hate relationship with Toronto Maple Leaf fans. And he said the reason,
McCabe rule. Do you know what the McCabe rule was in television?
The McCabe rule?
In television.
Did it have something to do with the can opener, which he was famous for?
No. The
was the
McCabe
McCabe
rule
rule?
was whenever the Leafs gave up a goal, the camera had to cut to McCabe.
Oh, because
Like even
Great
if he was
visuals?
sitting in the crowd, they had to, like, it was somehow his fault. Every goal. Like I would joke with the producers if we were doing like a Montreal Ottawa game and Daniel Alfredson scored, I would say cut to McCabe. Yeah. I would joke
That's
with the hockey
funny.
night because it always seemed like whenever Toronto gave up a goal, the first cut was Brian McCabe, even if he had nothing to do with it.
Doesn't matter. Just go right to cut to Brian McCabe. Oh, that's funny. But this person said to me something that's really interesting. He said that, Maple Leafs fans, as much as they wanted to stay on Brian McCabe, he always had something that could get the fans back, and that was the shot. Caberlet would feed him just like a gorgeous pass because he did his whole career, would feed him just a beautiful pass, and Brian McCabe would one-time it as good as and probably better than anybody else in the NHL at that point, and the fans would love him again. He had the shot. The shot could get the fans back on his side. And he said the problem was, you look at some of these other defensemen, whether it's, Aki Berg or Jake Gardiner or Corey Cross, most recently Justin Hall, they never had anything that could get the fans back on their side. There wasn't anything big. Like none of these guys are big and tough. None of these guys have back-scratching slap shots, right? Like Jake Gardiner is skating, right? But no one's going to be like, oh, wow, I'm back with Jake Gardiner because he's such a glorious skater. McCabe could get them back. And this is what I think about with John Klingberg. Is there one thing that he does that can get fans back? Because, the one thing about Maple Leafs fans is, and it's always a defenseman for whatever reason, they pick one defenseman on every
Larry
single
Murphy.
team. Larry Murphy was the beginning of all of it. And then he went to Detroit and won Stanley Cups and was the best decoy of all time in 1987 on that Gretzky to Lemieux goal in the Canada Cup. But they make up their mind about a defenseman, and there's no getting them back unless they can do something spectacular. And that's not John Klingberg's game. That's why when you say he's gone through the meat grinder,
If he runs a big power play, then it changes it.
I guess, I don't know. Like, we've seen so many defensemen wilt in Toronto under the pressure of what the fans can do to them. Like, I'm with you on this one 100%. It takes and this is why, and I know that Dion Phaneuf has a lot of detractors, but that's why I really do respect Dion Phaneuf. He took it all, went in front of every camera, embraced the role, had the shot, didn't always win fights, but answered bells. Like, I got a lot of respect for how he handled himself in Toronto. And fans got on him, and he did not wilt. It takes a special kind of D to do that.
Also, don't forget that Phaneuf started in Calgary.
Yes.
So
had a lot of success early.
It's not Toronto, and I know everybody in Alberta will love to hear that. Calgary is not Toronto.
Way to go, Elliotte. Way to make friends in Alberta,
it's
Elliotte.
still intense. It's still very intense. So he at least could handle it. Klingberg, I do not like to kick people when they're down. I hate to see people struggle publicly.
Same.
That is tough to watch. Like, Kelly Rudy had a tough time watching Huberdeau on Wednesday night. I actually thought Klingberg was tougher to watch in Toronto. Another case where Toronto was better than Calgary.
Oh, they're loving you in Alberta. Elliotte is available for autograph signings. Everyone wants to book him in Alberta. Okay, so the good and the bad, le bien et le mal, comme on dit en français, from the heights of beating the Toronto Maple Leafs, doubling them up in Toronto, and the coach gets a hug from the owner. Everything's great with the Sens, right? Enter the Vancouver Canucks in a 5-2 final. And everything is, once again, bad with the Ottawa Senators.
What's Gord Stellick's old line? If you're going to stink on the road. They, actually, Ottawa didn't play that badly at all. They outshot them 2-1. This is the Canucks magic formula this year. Our goal, because DeSmith has been very good. Like,
Yes,
Demko's obviously been the big superstar, and he deserves all the accolades he's getting. But DeSmith has been really good. He's given them good opportunities. And once again, it was one of those games where the Canucks were outshot 2-1. Their goalie keeps them in the game. And then when their guys get going, they just stampede you. They absolutely stampede you up and down the ice. And that's exactly what happened again. It's a good recipe for them so far. The Senators, that was a huge win in Toronto, considering, look, it was funny. I was talking with someone, and they said, you know what the worst thing for Ottawa was with the Brady Tkachuk outburst on last Saturday night? And I said, what's that? And he goes that there were 3 days off. Because you're looking at that, if you're a media relations person or you're someone else in the organization, you said, okay, Brady, don't mind you standing up for your coach. Excellent job. I really wish there was a game tomorrow or on Monday, because now you know that dominates the news cycle for 3 days.
Yeah.
And they go out, and to their credit, they fell behind early. They tied it. They were up twice. They blew the leads, and they found a way to win. Like, that was a good win over Toronto on Wednesday. Then they come home and they lose Thursday. They have to be worried about Forsberg at this point. He's just, like Korpisalo hasn't been great, but it's pretty clear that Ottawa doesn't trust Forsberg a ton right now, and that's a problem. But, the other thing, too, is that just talking to Ottawa, I really do believe that the number one thing behind the scenes is that the players told Andlauer Staios that there's been too much chaos here. And I'm not just talking about this year. I'm talking about going back under the Melnyk ownership, the sale, changes, trades, players in, players out. They just said you need to create an environment where we don't have to answer questions about other things. We can just play. And I believe Steve Staios heard that message loud and clear. And he wants to build the stability, and he wants to build the confidence of the team. And he, as a former player who played almost 1,000 games, he will do what he can to do that. The thing is, the players have to live up to their end of the bargain. They did on Wednesday, which was critical because they spoke out big. Yep. And you have to do that. When you talk a big game, you have to deliver. But unless you really build a streak of 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 2 in a row, things like that, eventually you're going to force the team to act. So I think Staios is sitting there, and he addressed the team on Monday morning. I think he has told them he will do everything he can to create that environment for them. And I don't know if he said it or it was unspoken or Alfredson said it because he was there. But it was basically said, if you need us to do this, you have to hold up your end of the bargain. I don't even think you need to say it, Jeff. I think the
Right.
players understand it. But the way you play on ice determines if your front office can keep down the noise. And so that's the side of the game that Ottawa has to step into. I know Ottawa was looking around for defensemen, like depth guys, but they're so capped out, it was really hard for them to do.
Okay, let's get a palate cleanser in here. We're going to talk about a lot of negative stuff here on this podcast. It's a doom and gloom, clouds and lightning bolts and thunder in the sky podcast so far. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much did you enjoy seeing Vinny Lettieri score his first career NHL goal while grandfather Lou Nanne helped call the game on television?
On a scale of 1 to 10, the number would be 11 billion.
It's your favorite number.
Yes, and you know, Lou Nanne, I give him credit. He was a lot more reserved than I would have been. If
Amen.
that was me,
Yeah.
I would have gone all Dave Mishkin in the broadcast booth, where they wouldn't have needed a microphone to hear me in Thailand. They would have been able to hear me if my grandchild scored in his first goal in an NHL game I was watching. You know, the other thing I really liked this week was Charlie Coyle's first career hat trick. That was nice on
real
Thursday
nice.
night. Very
Against
nice.
the Islanders.
Like
That
to
was a
see
good game.
And Louis Domingue gets his first win in almost 2 years. You know, I think the
spicy pork, Louis
pork
Domingue.
and broccoli. And
Yeah.
you know, the thing about the Rangers too is, like, look at what they're doing. No Fox,
No Heedle.
no Hedel, Shesterkin and Quick out, and Quick's giving them some good games, and they're winning games. They're winning games with important players out. That's a confident team right now. You know, like, to me, it's really amazing. Laviolette goes from Washington to the Rangers. He leaves Washington. It's stale. By his admission, it's stale. By the players' admission, it's stale. And he goes to the Rangers, and they look a little bit rejuvenated. Like, again, it's the Larry Bird rule. 3 years and then go, which shows it even more amazing that John Cooper is there going strong after a decade, although he's probably sick of seeing Connor Bedard right now.
And still no Coach of the Year award in any of those seasons for John Cooper. Real quick, it was about 5 minutes ago that as I did my NHL award balloting, I had Artemi Panarin winning the Hart Trophy. And Elliotte, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get that soap and warm water feeling again for Artemi Panarin, who is capital B back to kick off this season. This is the Panarin that we all love. You have a thought on him right now?
He's the anti-Samson.
They should all shave their head.
You cut his hair and he regains his powers. Yes.
Yes, everyone. If you want to get you want your slump buster, follow Panarin. Shave your head. He's been fantastic.
What I would say about Panarin is, like, you talk about how they're winning games, missing important people. That's when your best players have to be at their best. And he has done that. Vancouver, to me, is the team this year where the best players have been consistently at the top level every game this year. I think no team has done that better than the Canucks. But I would say that Panarin on an individual basis has been consistently great, and even more now than that they've been guys been hurt. Like, we talked about this, I think a couple pods ago. You talk about empty calories. In the NHL, there are no such thing as empty calories. Every win is like a delicious 5-star Michelin meal. I don't care if the team has 1 point or if the team has 20 points right now. Every win is a 5-star Michelin meal. And the Rangers gained their confidence beating some teams that were really struggling, Calgary, Edmonton, and now they feel it. You know, people might say, oh, it doesn't matter, those teams aren't very good.
Yeah.
It matters.
Let me guess. You went out for dinner tonight?
I did go out for dinner tonight. I had a great branzino. I have the weirdest new routine, by the way, in the morning. Okay.
In the morning?
I don't do
Okay,
it.
what do you-
I
what
don't
do you
do
got?
it every day. I don't do it every day, but I do it a bit. So I live not far from a great mall, Yorkdale. It's a great mall.
Yeah.
I love it. And do you know the store Aritzia?
Of course I do. Yeah.
Okay, I'm making sure. Like you dress in felt.
I have been in a mall before, Elliotte.
Okay, I don't know. Like Jeff, like you do weird things. I don't profess to know what you know.
That is
so
fair.
the Aritzia at Yorkdale Mall now has like a coffee shop in it.
Mm-hmm.
And they make great Americanos, and they have very comfortable chairs. So one of my morning routines when I'm reading or I'm scrolling the phone is I go and I sit down and have an Americano with Aritzia. And I have to say, some of my friends are really incredulous about this, and they're like, "Wait a sec. Are you watching women shop for clothing? Don't you think that's a little bit creepy?" And I just say, guys, the Americano is delicious. And that's where I do like a lot of my early morning work or just to, make some notes. So Jeff, you know what I was thinking about when I was drinking my coffee at a women's clothing store?
How when we first met each other, you were wearing like Arthur Ashes and track pants and beaver canoe sweatshirts, and now you're wearing the height of fashion at Yorkdale Mall.
No, I was not thinking about that. I was thinking about Patrick Kane.
Oh,
And
okay.
we're talking about where he could end up. I'm wondering if Carolina's in this.
But they're sneaky in on everybody, though, right? Aren't they one of those teams that like anytime a big name is out there, Dundon's like, Donnie, get that guy.
Yeah, I think there's truth to that. But I also think in this particular case, I think Kane is going by who can he pick that he thinks has a great chance to win the cup. And I know Carolina's goaltending has not been great this year, but I generally think they're a contender. Like, that's a good team.
It's a really good team. They're just really good on the right side right now, too. Though that's the only thing that I keep coming back to. Okay, who needs the big help on the right side? But I could see Carolina, because like we've talked about previous, they're in on a lot of big players that we never end up associating them with. Before we go to break here, let me swing back on Minnesota. The Kalen Addison trade to San Jose and the subsequent deal for Zach Bogosian, who I will always point out when any one of these three move, there are three remaining Thrashers in the NHL. Zach Bogosian is one of them, so we pay attention to our Thrashers. How did you see that entire scenario?
I think I knew since the summer, and I think I'm not just me. I think a lot of people kind of realized since the summer that it wasn't. It was rocky waters between Addison and the Wild. Like, it was pretty clear that they weren't crazy on him, and he wasn't crazy on them. And I think they tried to move him in the summer, but they just didn't find anything that made sense for them. And Michael Russo, who covers them a lot closer than I do, he talked about how they're going to a five-person power play. Five-person, that's good, five-person power play. They're going to a five-forward power play.
Five people with skates on.
And it really stripped Addison's role with the team. So when I heard he was getting traded, I wasn't hugely surprised. I think that's a great move for San Jose. That's the kind of gamble they should be making. And especially since it's a fifth-round pick. Like, you're not really giving away anything that you look at and saying, well, that's nothing that a rebuilding team should be giving away. I like that gamble for the Sharks. Bogosian's interesting. Minnesota really likes him. He fits the Wild's identity. Like that, when I look at Bogosian, I look at him and I say, that's a Wild. Doesn't really work. Like, that's a Red Wing, or that's a Flame.
That's a Wild.
Or that's a Ranger. Like, it just doesn't roll off the tongue.
Just say it. We know what you mean.
Yeah, he's a Wild. And, he wasn't playing. I think they'd been trying to trade him for some time. They put him on waivers. I think if Minnesota had more cap room at the time, they might have taken Bogosian on waivers. But I look at it, if there's a team that's going to look at Zach Bogosian and say he fits with what we do, it's Minnesota. So I see it. You know, the guy who I'm concerned about there is Gustafsson. I know they don't lean on him 100% of the time. They've got a combo, Gustafsson and Fleury. But obviously at this point in time, Gustafsson's the guy who's got to carry the mail, and he had a big breakthrough year last year. And he's really struggled so far this year. They need to... They need him to get back to where he was last season because he was such a huge part of their success.
On that, we'll take a break. Back with the Montana's Thought Line. A couple of more notes from around the NHL. And I'm going to quiz Elliotte on Swiss hockey players. Put your head back, Elliotte. Here comes the drill.
Oh, boy.
32 Thoughts continues. Listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. All right, Elliotte, before we get to the Montana's Thought Line, and your tag is really catching on, it's in all the tweets, it's in all the texts and the phone calls and the DMs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's amazing.
At the beginning,
you guys are great listeners. Great.
Yes, 100%. You play along. It's awesome. The beginning of the week, I always look at the schedule and say, okay, what could be the game of the week? Look at the schedule, which looks really interesting, and the one that I circled didn't disappoint. And that was Wednesday's Los Angeles-Vegas game. 3-1, the Los Angeles Kings over the Vegas Golden Knights. Cam Talbot, outstanding 37 saves. On Jay Kopitar with career goal number 400. Let's give it up for Adrian Kempe, can we, a little bit here? One of the unsung guys around the NHL, 14 points in 12 games. Kevin Fiala plays in game number 500. He is number 5 amongst all Swiss-born players. You see where I'm going here. That's coming up in a moment. You have a thought on what we saw between the Kings of the night, the game of the week so far in the NHL?
I'd love to see a 7-game series between those two teams.
Amen.
Do you remember when Vegas and the Kings played that series a few years ago, and it was like 1930s football? Okay, hand it to the running back, 3 yards. 2nd down and 7, hand it to the running back, 3 yards.
Now we go the other way.
3rd down and 4, hand it to the running back. Oh, did you get the first down? Yes. Let's do it again. Same plays. No, punt. It was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I think 7 games between these two teams would be incredible. It's going to take a heck of a team to beat Vegas.
What would the attrition rate be?
Yeah.
What would the attrition rate be amongst players in that series?
You'd better hope your AHL teams were out because you would need everybody. I just think that it'll be interesting to see what the Kings ultimately decide to do in goal.
I agree.
But
Talbot's played great, though. He's played great.
He's played very well. I'm just saying we'll see where this goes.
I know.
But the Kings, like the Kings are designed to play up and down, structure, grind, and they're more talented now than they were the last few years with some of the guys they've added. Some of the guys maturing, but some of the guys they've obviously added, they're more talented than they were. I'd love to see it in 7 games because I think they're one of the few teams built, not counting goaltending right now, because we'll see. I gotta let it play out. But they're one of the few teams I think that's really built to face a team like Vegas. Now, the one thing that's going to be interesting to me is Kopitar last year really slowed as the year went on. Not just because, there's a lot of mileage there. Now they go out and they get Dubois. In exchange, they should have a fresher Kopitar at the start of the playoffs. That was what I thought was the difference between LA and Edmonton last year. One of the differences is that Kopitar had such a tremendous year, but when the playoffs started, I just think he was worn down. If you can get a fresher Kopitar or a more rested Kopitar for the start of the postseason, I think he's a difference maker. I do.
Kevin Fiala can be a difference maker as well. He's played good. They have a few players that can be difference makers. A second ago, I mentioned Adrian Kempe. Quentin Byfield's having a really nice season, but let me swing back to Kevin Fiala here. So, Plays in game number 500. He is now 5th amongst all Swiss-born hockey players. And like Elliotte, you and I are the same vintage. I think we all grew up wondering, considering how much of a hockey culture there has always been going back to the 20s and probably previous to that as well, how much of a great hockey culture there's been in Switzerland. How come they've had such a hard time graduating players to the NHL? Like in any capacity, fourth liners to superstars. Well, we're seeing it consistently now, finally. So Fiala's at game number 500. He's 5th all-time among Swiss-born players. You want to have a swing at who the other 4 are as far as games played amongst Swiss players?
Yossi.
Number 1. Okay, you're off to a great start. Roman Yossi, number 1, 839.
One guy who comes to my head, but he started later, so I'm not sure if he would be there, would be Mark Streit.
Is 3rd. Very good one.
He got there?
He's 3rd. So Streit, I love Streit because he was both a winger and a defenseman. Versatile guy. He could play up, he could play back. Yes, he's 3rd with 786 games played.
I was just wondering if he made it because he started a bit later.
Good job.
Niederreiter, he has to be up there.
Number 2, Niederreiter, 822. So who's number 4? I can give you a major hint and you'll get it in a second.
I don't want the hint.
Okay, let me give you an obscure hint.
I don't. No hint.
Hang on.
I don't want.
Sure?
No, I do not want a hint.
All right.
I want to see if I can get this on my own.
Okay. Boring.
Okay, so it's obviously not Timo Meyer.
No, not yet. Not Nico Hischier either, or Jonas Hill.
No. Meyer's been around longer than Hischier.
Hischier's going to beat all of them, by the way. My boy Nico is going to beat them all.
Is it Yannick Weber?
No, great guess. He's 6 at 499. He's the guy Kevin Fiala jumped over.
Well, you know what?
You're so close.
I was looking at this 3 days ago. I was thinking 3 days ago.
That's good. Oh, wow. Let me know when you want the clue.
No, I'm thinking.
Take the clue.
No,
you're thinking
not yet.
the first time. Elliott's thinking the first time is always the worst.
Is it somebody who was not born in Switzerland but is Swiss?
Technically, this player was not born in Switzerland.
Okay, all right.
But he is Swiss.
Oh, okay, all right. Give me the non-obvious hint.
Here, Elliotte. Here's your hint. Ready for it?
Yeah, okay. This is the non-obvious hint, right?
Non-obvious hint.
Okay.
Joe Sorella. I'm having fun. Your hint is Joe Sorella.
That doesn't.
This
help
player,
me at
this
all.
player, and Joe Sorella have something very much in common that is completely unique in hockey.
Yeah, I have. Give me the easy hint.
He's a defenseman.
These are the worst hints I've
who played.
ever heard.
Okay, all right. He's a defenseman that was drafted by the Flyers, but was traded to the Anaheim Ducks in the Chris Pronger deal. There you go. There's your easy one.
Oh, Smeed.
Ladislav. No.
Oh, Lucas Spiza.
Yes, Lucas Spiza. Oh, my goodness. Yes, Lucas Spiza.
Oh, he's one of the nicest guys around. I feel terrible. It took me so long to get it.
And you know what he has in common with Joe Sorella?
Their names both end in A?
Oh, my God. Okay, Cliff Clavin. Neither have been in my kitchen. No, they both played a year in the NHL and they went back to junior.
That's the worst hint ever.
You know how rare that is?
By the way,
Plays season
Lucas
in the NHL.
Spiza was not born in Switzerland.
That's what I said. He wasn't born in Switzerland. He's born in Italy, but he's Swiss.
I forgot about Lucas Spiza. I feel shame. I should have got that one.
You go $2, 2 minutes, you feel ashamed, then you get free. You know what? You can make up for it now with the great tagline. Time for the Montana's Thought Line. Montana's Barbecue and Bar. Canada's home for barbecue. Elliotte.
Try the ribs.
32 Thoughts at sportsnet.ca is the email. 1-833-311-3232 is the phone number. Matt. Hello, Jeff and Elliotte. Hope you're both having great days. Are the Sens allowed to trade a first-round pick within the next 3 years before deciding which of the 3 years they want to lose as a result of the suspension? For an example, can they decide to trade their 2024 first-rounder before deciding if they want to lose their 25 or 26 pick.
You can always punt it. Yes. Like the thing is you have to decide one of the 3 picks, but it doesn't mean you can't trade one of the picks beforehand. It just limits your options on what you can accept as the punishment.
Okay, let's get to a voicemail from Elliotte in Crow's Nest Pass.
I like this guy.
Just got a quick question for you. I had my in-laws ask me, who are Oilers fans, I a Flames fan, so you can imagine how that goes every night. But Jack Campbell's soup was just placed on waivers, and one of my in-laws asked me, what exactly does that mean? So from my understanding, it's putting the NHL players' contract and rights up for grabs. Now, I guess I'm wondering if there's any sort of repercussions to doing so. Like, are there any fees to the team or the organization? And I guess just what comes of it after the fact, whether he's claimed or cleared, how does that work? So I did my best to explain to them, but I think you guys could do a much better job. So hopefully they hear this, and hopefully you guys get this. Jeff, awesome job as always. Dom, great job. Seamless transition into the pod. And Elliotte, it's in the name. Great work, man. Thank you guys.
That's very good.
Hope you have a great day.
It's good. It's all in the name. You want to explain waivers to our friend Checks Notes, Elliotte?
Yes, Elliotte from Elliotte. Basically what happens is if a team claims Jack Campbell, they get all his salary. You accept his entire contract. So everything that's remaining from here to there, you have to pay it. That's how it goes. If Campbell stays in the minor leagues, the Oilers or whoever would take him would get $1.15 million in cap space. You lose $1.15 million off the cap with any player who makes more than that amount of money. So that's pretty much how it goes. Am I missing anything there, Jeff?
No, and he has to be made available, as Elliotte from Crow's Nest Pass mentioned, to all 31 other teams. That's what.
Yes, and the way it works is points percentage.
Yeah, if you're going to send him down to the American Hockey League, you have to make him available to other NHL teams who may have a job for him in the NHL. This is something that the NHL Players Association worked on years and years and years and years and years ago to ensure players don't get buried in the minors. You know, once upon a time, I'm going to send you to Springfield and Eddie Shore is going to bury you and you're never going to come back up to the NHL. Waivers is one of the ways around that. So, okay, if you want to try to send him to the minors, let's see if there's another team in the league that might be able to use him and keep him in the NHL.
Excellent.
That's a little history of waivers. Okay, this from Matt. Jeff, Elliotte, Dom, love the pod, longtime listener. Got to get that in there to make it sound better than everyone else. If you think you can get on this podcast by complimenting us, Matt, you're exactly right. Basic question, but I've never seen it before. Can refs who call a penalty swap arms? Yes, Elliotte, swap arms if the delayed penalty goes on for a while. Let's say it's delayed for minutes and their arm goes numb. Can it be swapped to the other arm? Hope this basic question gives you a chuckle. It did, as it does with me writing it. Ha ha, cheers, guys. So it's one thing for you and I to pontificate on this one, Elliotte. So I reached out today to Dave Jackson, former NHL referee, now works with ESPN.
First of all, you know what the
What?
first thing I thought of when I heard this question was? Is this a relative of yours?
No, it's not. This is Matt. I even know where Matt is from, but it is kind of.
Because only a relative of yours would ask this kind of a question.
Well, my brother-in-law isn't official. But here's what Dave Jackson writes back to me today, and he's cool with me using this. This is Dave Jackson's answer. He's busy. He's got a doubleheader on ESPN. So, from Dave Jackson, ha, absolutely. However, you try to keep your non-whistle arm in the air so that when you blow the whistle, the fans know why it was blown because they see the ref's arm in the air. If it was an exceedingly long delayed penalty, I see no reason why you couldn't. Try to send him along to my Twitter account. Those are questions I answer daily. LOL. Hope you're well. Say hi to the guys. His Twitter account, by the way, is at ESPNRefNHL. That is him on Twitter. Thanks for the celebrity answer for that one, Dave Jackson. Did you ever think about that?
No.
An official's arm getting numb, being up in the air for so long on a delayed penalty?
I am proud to say I've never even considered that.
Okay.
Now,
I don't know
maybe
you
that
were
makes me a terrible and selfish human being, but I have never thought about that.
Again, you think more about Faye Dunaway than you think about referees' arms in the air.
And
We've
I am
established that
not
earlier
wrong for that opinion.
on. Connor, dear Jeff, Elliotte, and Dom, just wanted to know which Stanley Cup final was your favorite since you started covering hockey. It could be your favorite because of the quality of play, the storylines, the teams, you name it. Love the pod. Let's go wild. I'm guessing Connor's from Minnesota. Your favorite Stanley Cup final, Elliott's.
I'm going to hate to do this to people. I really am. I want people to know that when I say this, I'm really not trying to hurt anyone. I'm talking about it because of A, the quality of play, and B, just the amount of fun that we had on the trip. And that was 2011 Vancouver, Boston. It was sorry, Canucks fans. I know it wasn't the result you wanted. As a matter of fact, during the interview we did with Chris Tanev, we were talking about Bieksa, and I said it's the one thing I will never make fun of on Bieksa is that final, because I know how hard it is to go that far and not get it done. But the people we hung around with, the quality of the games, the drama of the series. It was by far and away the best one I've ever personally been a part of. And so that's my pick. Have I ever told the Lululemon story on this podcast before? I've told it once, but I don't think it was on this pod.
Is this the one that PJ blasted you for?
Well, yeah. So we went to Lululemon in Vancouver, a bunch of us, and we got some gear. And one thing I did was I bought a pair of black Lululemon pants for myself, and I bought a pair of black Lululemon pants for my wife. And so we were traveling from Vancouver to Boston one off day, and we went out the night before. It was after, because they play the games in Vancouver at 5:00 local. So we worked the game. Vancouver wins. We're going back to Boston, and we go out first. And it was a good night. It was a really, really fun night. And unfortunately, you get home from the bar. It's like 4:30 in the morning, and the buses are picking us up to go to the airport at like 6. So you got to pack. You don't get a lot of sleep. There's alcohol involved. And I threw on the black pants, and I just assumed that they were the black pants that were for me.
Oh, no.
But Jeff, they were not.
Oh, no.
And
are these hang on, these are the pants that are so tight you can see what religion you are?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And then in the security, it was either I can't remember if it was in the security line or it was in the customs line. One of our travelers recognized and said, "Elliotte, you're not wearing your pants.
That's awesome. Oh, it's so
You are wearing Steph's Lululemon pants."
Oh,
and needless to say, this spread like wildfire.
Oh, Elliotte, that's glorious.
Yes.
Oh, that's so good. Please.
Everybody who took that flight with me saw a lot more of me than they wanted to.
The part of you that is most a man. On that, we'll wrap. There's a couple of other ones I wanted to get to, but no one's going to top that story on this podcast. So let's hit a break. But before we do, remind everyone that was the Montana's Thought Line, Montana's Barbecue and Bar, Canada's home for barbecue. We'll finish this hockey podcast up in a moment. Okay, Elliotte, wrapping up another edition of 32 Thoughts, the podcast here. And here's one of the things I wonder about, as I think it's sort of sharpened focus on this now, so people may stop doing it. I know full well that they probably won't, but nonetheless, here I go. When will people stop thinking for 1 second that Gary Bettman is going to rule against George Parros? Charlie McAvoy's 4-game suspension upheld by Gary Bettman.
I guess you always try, right? But nobody was surprised. I guess they wondered if they would get the benefit of the doubt because Ekman Larson played and didn't miss games like Laine. But you said from the beginning, Bettman's not going to undercut one of his vice presidents, and I completely agree with you.
Okay, before I wrap up, here's what I want to ask you. Because I'm at Lake Placid right now. Earlier was at the Olympic
Brooks
Center,
Arena.
and
That's
I'm
really
going-
cool. Really cool.
Dude, it's such a thrill. I have never been here before. This is fantastic. My 13-year-old son is in a hockey tournament here. It's great. I've always wanted to come here. Now this is a great excuse for it. I'll be honest with you, at the opening ceremony, there was a moment where your boy Jeffy had to take a little pause when he saw his son on the ice at Brooks Arena, considering, how historic this rink, that facility is, this place is, and how near and dear it is to hockey fans' hearts. But I do wonder, like, this was a bucket list moment for me. I always wanted to go to Lake Placid, and always wanted to get to this rink, the home of both. I've always felt about one thing about the Miracle on Ice, and that is, and this is all outside of all the players and. A lot of them are wonderful. There's been, the heights of glory. There's been a lot of tragedy with a lot of these players and their subsequent lives. There's been some tradition started. Ken Morrow, Olympic gold, Stanley Cup with the New York Islanders. And then I believe it was him. I don't know if it was him himself or just the Islanders team that started the beard tradition in the playoffs. But we talk about a great couple of months for someone. Olympic gold in one of the biggest hockey games, maybe the biggest hockey game of all time, and then helps the New York Islanders win a Stanley Cup. But I digress. It's the home of both the best coaching and the worst coaching maybe the sport has ever seen. It was Herb Brooks
at the same time.
At the same time, inspiring these athletes like never before. And then it was Viktor Tikhonov who, and he subsequently regretted it, pulled Tretiak after the first period, and then didn't pull a Michigan for the extra attacker as the Soviets were about to lose to these upstart college kids. And I think a lot of those Soviet players afterwards, essentially, if I can paraphrase a few, just said, "Yeah, dumb coaching." Anyhow, this has always been a bucket list rink for me to go to, a bucket list place to go to. Luzhniki is another one for me.
Yeah.
Not that I'm overly nostalgic about 72 because I didn't see it live. I was 3 years old. So that one doesn't resonate for me as much as it does for other people. But I still would like to go.
Yeah.
Do you have bucket
I went
list
to
rinks?
Moscow and I didn't go there, and I regret it. I do.
Oh, you didn't go to Luzhniki, eh? Wow.
No,
That's
I
like when I
regret that.
when I was in Beijing, I did everything except the Terracotta Warriors, and I still kick myself for it because I wanted to go see Terracotta Warriors. Anyhow, bucket lists for rinks for you, Elliotte.
Unfortunately, a lot of them are some of the old ones that really aren't around anymore. I never had the opportunity to go to Boston Garden. I went to Chicago Stadium. I went to the Montreal Forum. Obviously, I knew Maple Leaf Gardens. But some of the old arenas that I saw NHL teams play in would be the ones that I thought, I'll tell you this, Jeff, the arena where I played in Toronto growing up as a very lousy hockey player was Woodbine Arena in Toronto, right next to the Peanut Plaza. And I remember I walked in there to visit a friend. His kid was playing, and I went in to go see it. And when I walked in there a few years ago, it was like it all came flying back to me.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
That was probably the one where it really hit me because I hadn't played in a long time, and I just brought back memories of myself like learning to skate and being a real chicken. Like that was my biggest problem as a young hockey player was I was very soft. But so I think that unfortunately for me, a lot of the arenas that I'd like to see, they're gone now. And, that's kind of too bad.
I really liked going to at Hockey Day in Canada when it was in Stratford, the William Allman Arena, when you talk about history and uninterrupted streaks of continuous play. And then a few years ago, one of my kids was in a tournament at the Galt Arena, legendary. And Gordie Howe played there for a little bit as well. So those were a couple that I was happy to check off. But there's still more, and I know what you mean about going back to your first rink. Whenever I go back to Lambton Arena in the west end of Toronto, playing for Warren Park, it all comes back to me. All of it, Frege. I know what you're talking about. Anyhow, so signing off here from Lake Placid, Elliotte in Toronto and Dom in Vancouver. Thanks for joining us once again on 32 Thoughts, the podcast. We return Monday morning on your favorite podcast platform. Enjoy a weekend's worth of hockey. Talk to you next week.